Thank you for joining another wonderful episode of Success Innovation. Today's episode is called STEMForce, a movement to be reckoned with. In this episode, I was pleasantly surprised because I only assumed one individual would be joining the conversation, but we have the privilege of listening to two, Brent Gaddis II and Sasha Sells. They are two of the founders for STEMForce. We dive deep into their early beginnings and how they have been able to overcome so many obstacles, both personal and professional. Welcome Brent Gaddis II and Sasha Sells. Let's get started. Welcome back to another wonderful episode of Success Innovation. Thank you so much to the audience, to the listeners, to the viewers. I am so happy today because I have a tandem, a group of individuals that are here to talk about a very interesting endeavor that they're taking on, a venture that they're doing. First off, I want to thank you both for being part of the Success Innovation show. I have Brent Gaddis II and Sasha Sells, and both of them are from STEMForce. They are the two of the creators from STEMForce in Oklahoma. Welcome, guys, to Success Innovation. How are both of you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great.
I'm doing great as well.
Yeah, thanks for having us on the podcast.
No problem. Thank you for being here. You know, and as I mentioned to you earlier, we want to get to know you a little better as to your background. I know that both of you are engineers. I know that Brent, you went to the University of Oklahoma, Central University of Oklahoma, but I don't know exactly what your path was. Can each of you kind of tell us briefly about 5 minutes or less? We'll start with Sasha, if that's all right.
Yeah, so I'm from Tulsa originally, and I'm the oldest of three. I actually decided that I wanted to do chemical engineering because I always liked to problem solve and I liked science growing up. And so right now I'm a senior studying chemical engineering at the University of Oklahoma. And I'm also an intern at Fresenius Medical Care, where I work on a new prototype for a home dialysis machine.
Awesome, great. What about you, Brent?
Yeah. So I'm actually originally from Oklahoma City, Middle City and Oklahoma City. I kind of switched back and forth, but been here my whole life. Attended University of Central Oklahoma, as you stated earlier, and got into engineering just because I was really a big car guy. Hot Wheels cars were my thing. So got into mechanical engineering and then ended up also doing electrical engineering.
So you have both majors, electrical and mechanical?
Yeah. So I studied both.
So you're double major?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Oh, great. Awesome. Yeah. Did that take you a little longer or no?
A little bit, but a lot of the classes actually overlapped at the school I was at. So I was able to kind of have classes count for like both majors. So it made it a little shorter, but yeah. So I did that. And then now I'm currently working at Boeing doing electromagnetic effects. So
right. Exactly. Cool. And how long ago did you graduate, Brent?
So I graduated 2018, and then I actually did a year at OU doing my master's before I stopped that.
So you have your master's as well. Is your master's in mechanical?
I started. I haven't.
Oh, you have not finished.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was in electrical though, since I'm working in an electrical group.
Okay, great. So we're going to go back to Sasha here for a little bit. You're a senior and you're doing an internship, right? Correct.
Right.
Was engineering, but first of all, was going to college something that was instilled in you from an early age at home, or how did you actually find the passion and the path to go ahead into STEM, into science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, in one of those technical fields? How did that come about?
So in my childhood or throughout my life, my parents always instilled in me, go to college, make sure that you make good grades so that you can get in schools that you want to attend. And so that was a really good opportunity for me. And luckily, my mom was a big inspiration for me. Whenever I was in middle school, she hadn't finished her bachelor's degree. And so she went back and she actually did it in biology. And so that opened my eyes at first to STEM. And then I had no idea of what an engineer did until one of my high school physics teachers were like, hey, I really think that you could do engineering. And so that opened my eyes, and I started thinking about, well, what type of engineer would I be if I went into the industry? And when I was younger, I always asked my mom, like I was probably 9 years old, for a microscope. And so I was often
For a
doing a lot of
microscope,
science.
you asked her for a mic. Oh, okay. All
Yeah,
right.
for
9 years old.
Christmas,
Right.
they had the kid microscopes, and I asked her, and that was what she got me for Christmas, because I asked like every week, probably.
Awesome. Awesome. How about
Yeah.
you there, Brent? Well,
Yeah.
at what age was it when
Mhm.
that spark kind of hit and you said, all right, well, I want to go into engineering. I know you mentioned
Mhm.
you're into cars,
Right.
but was engineering, or as a matter of fact, let's go back a little further, was
Mhm.
going to college something that was instilled by your family from an early age?
Yeah, so kind of similar to Stacia's family. My parents both graduated from college. They weren't anything in STEM. They were both, one was business, one was psychology.
Mhm.
But they, from a very early age, it wasn't really a, if you want to go to college, it was like you're going to college kind of thing. So it wasn't really, it was more of like, what do you want to do with your life? That would fulfill your life kind of thing,
Right,
was more their focus.
right.
And so how I got into engineering specifically was actually, um, I didn't know what engineering was either. Just being in the environment I was in, wasn't really exposed to it. So I actually was going to go be a car mechanic because I was like, oh, I get to work on cars. And it was actually my mom that was like, you know, you need to shoot higher than that. And so we ended up Googling who makes cars, and mechanical
Wait.
engineering pops up.
Let me stop you right there. Your
Yeah.
mom said you need to shoot higher than that.
Yeah.
How was that conversation? And what did you actually think when she said those words? You need to
Mhm.
shoot higher than that. Because
Yeah.
that resonates with a lot,
Mhm.
with me a lot.
Yeah.
And the reason it resonates with me a lot is because I continuously tell individuals or students, be it high school students or be it
Mhm.
community college students or first year university
Mhm.
students, you need to shoot higher
Yep.
than just, trying to get by and make ends
Yep.
meet, months and meet, and
Mhm.
whatnot. So how did that conversation actually
Yeah.
go with you and your mom?
Yeah, so I mean, both my parents always, they didn't set any boundaries on me and my older sister. It was just kind of, if this is what you want to go do, then what do we need to figure out so you can go do it? And so, we did have we always had these honest conversations where, they were, trying to teach us about life and, trying to prepare us for trying to get us to where we wanted to be at and not like right then where we want to be at, but like in the future, something that would actually fulfill us. And so she was always big on what's your purpose and getting to what that purpose is. And so that conversation, we had it a couple times, but this last one was right before my senior year of high school. And so, I mean, I was just going to go do business because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, with her just asking that question and us going and utilizing the internet, we actually came across what now is a whole career in engineering, and that is changed the whole course of my life. So it's small things like that.
Awesome, awesome. So somehow each one of you, because your parents or somebody, a mentor or somebody
Mhm.
a teacher supported you and asked you a question that ignited that little flame inside of your mind. And you
Right.
said, all right, I'm going to pursue
Mhm.
more than what I thought I was going to do. And you ended up going to college. Okay. So then each one of you steps into the university for the first time. Did you guys go straight from high school into a 4-year university? Did you go into community college? How did that happen?
We actually both went to a 4-year institution right off the
Okay,
bat.
awesome, awesome. And I'm getting at this because transitioning from high school to a
Mhm.
4-year university is such an interesting transition.
Yep.
I want you to go back and recount that transition period where it's a rude awakening to a certain extent. I mean, you're really proud
Yep.
because you know you have your
Right.
backpack and you have your books and you're all
Uh-huh.
excited. You're walking on campus and you're a freshman. You're like, I can't believe this. I'm in a four-year university. I'm gonna make it big. You step
Uh-huh.
into this room and there's, at least for me, it was like 200, 300 people in one
Mhm.
huge lecture hall, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, this is insane. It's not 30, 35
Right.
students in one classroom. And then, you know, the first midterm hits. And I want you to recount which course was the one that shook you up and you said, oh my God, I'm not in Kansas anymore.
I'll let you go first.
Right.
So strangely enough, even though I am studying chemical engineering and I'm very close to getting my degree, I actually had the where is Kansas moment in chemistry one, in Gen Chem one. I was like, what is this? I went and I studied so much at the library. I found friends to study with. And then the first exam hit and all of us did terrible. I had never seen that low of a test score in my life. I didn't even know that so many people could get that low of an average. And so it really shook me up because I never really did poorly in school. And so going through that first really tough time really built some resilience and really just I had to make a decision there because I even thought about possibly switching my major just because of how difficult some of those entry level courses were, let alone the more difficult ones. So I think that there was a huge transition from high school to being on my own, having to wake up, having to go to class, having to get food. I saw those free blocks on my schedule, like, oh, I don't have anything to do at this hour. But that turned into me doing laundry, studying, eating, everything that I thought just took for granted.
You're becoming an adult, responsibility starts setting
Right.
in, and you
Right.
start figuring out, oh my God, you know, I'm not a child anymore, and I got to be responsible. What about you, Brent?
Yeah, so mine was kind of twofold because I went to a 4-year institution, and then on top of that, I actually went to go play football as well. So I had the transition was as a college student, not only in STEM, but also I have this other aspect of I'm actually playing a sport on a scholarship. So that, that had its own demands on time and all of that. And then most football players aren't doing STEM, so then I had to explain to my coaches why I'm in physics and stuff like that. So that in itself was always interesting to say
Right.
the
No.
least.
Yes, for sure,
Um,
for sure.
they definitely didn't necessarily prefer me doing STEM because the labs were always during practice, but I knew what I wanted to do, so I was like, I'm doing it anyway. But the class that kind of welcomed me into college, so to speak, would be actually Calculus 1 because I wasn't one of the people that took calculus before they came into college because I didn't know that that's what you needed. Like you're supposed to be ahead in math and all of that stuff. So I took pre-calculus my senior year of high school. And I did okay, but I didn't do great either. So, coming into that and just realizing like, the huge portion of this and, the first test I, get destroyed on it and I'm like, oh God, this is different.
This is real now. This is
Yeah,
real.
I was like, this is real. It's real school because I was the kid that in high school didn't study for tests because I always had a really good like memory, so I would just memorize stuff.
Mhm.
And I quickly found out you can't memorize that stuff; you have to actually learn it. And so it started a whole process of me like learning how to study, and actually learn stuff. So it was a huge transition for me in general. So
Right. And I want to point out something that Sasha mentioned earlier. You know, she mentioned study groups, or she mentioned that she got a group of individuals where she essentially was going to study with, and that was a study group. I want to point out to the audience, to the young individuals, or to the professionals that are listening, you know, getting a support group, a study group going early
Yeah.
on makes a
Mhm.
huge difference. And I want to point out
Yes.
that what Brent said, I took pre-calculus in high school and I was shook. I was shaken when I took calculus one
Mhm.
in, Central Oklahoma University, because it was real. It was
Mhm.
not just a high school level class. And I've said this in other episodes to students and to young
Mhm.
professionals.
Yeah.
It's totally different when you're top of the class in high
Mhm.
school versus getting into a four-year university where top of the class students come from all over
Mhm.
nation, not
Yep.
just your high school. So
Yep.
your top of the class is top of the class, and
Mhm.
you're competing against those 10% top of the
Mhm.
class students. And
Right.
you got to fall somewhere in there. Somebody's got to be at the bottom,
Right.
somebody's going to be
Exactly.
at the middle, and somebody's going to be at the top. So this goes back to equality and equality type of thing. Depending on what advantages, disadvantages, depending on how you grew up, the resources you had, your
Mhm.
parents, what were they able to provide you with? Some students come way better prepared
Oh
because
yes.
their parents or their families know exactly what they need to do to succeed,
Mhm.
and they've always instructed them on how to do it, versus first generation students or lower income students or
Mhm.
middle class students where their parents are not really into STEM. It makes a huge difference.
Yes.
And you're entering at essentially a disadvantage when you're going in to compete against those individuals. And I say
Yep.
compete in a good sense of the word, because we
Mhm.
need to have individuals coming out of four-year college universities, top level, so that we can do competition at a national, worldwide level. So that's what I mean by competition at the university level. And then I'm going to focus on Brent on this one,
Mhm.
because you managed to graduate, and then you managed to get into Boeing. Boeing
Yep.
is a huge aerospace corporation within the United States. It's global, and it
Mhm.
does a lot of business with everything. It does commercial as well as DoD, Department
Yep.
of Defense type of vehicles, aircrafts. Now, are you in the DoD section, Department of Defense, or are you in the commercial aircraft side?
So I'm in the Department of Defense section,
Okay.
but my group specifically actually touches a little of the commercial as well. So I get a
Okay.
little bit of that too.
And for those of you listening, if you don't know what Boeing is or how they do or what it
Mhm.
is, they do those huge Southwestern aircraft or
Yep.
Delta or American airliners
Yep.
that you fly in. Those are the
Mhm.
ones. Or they also do the UAVs, unmanned aircraft
Yep.
that does reconnaissance for the military of the United States.
Mhm.
That type of work is what Boeing is doing. There's a lot of engineering that goes into it. But I
Yes.
want Brent to tell us,
Mhm.
how difficult was it for you to actually land a job at Boeing?
It was extremely hard. To be completely honest, before I got the opportunity to go work for them, I just assumed that it was something where I was gonna have to go work somewhere else and then, transfer in, once I get better at my job kind of thing. But I actually was able to get a internship at NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers, national convention the summer before my last year of college, and so got in that way, and just so happens I actually got the location in Oklahoma City, so I actually didn't have to go anywhere. So that was even better. But just getting in the door, I mean, there's Boeing is one of the premier companies, so just naturally you're going to have 500 plus people or more, trying to get the same jobs. And really, I think the thing that helped me the most was the fact that I did have the two different backgrounds. I had the mechanical and electrical. It just so happens that they were looking for electricals, and there was a bunch of aerospace and mechanical people in front of me, and so they pulled me out of line, and that's actually how I even got in front of recruiters, because they're actually almost out of time, so I probably wasn't going to get in the door. So having that versatility actually helped me get in there, and so yeah, so I ended up doing 3 internships in total. So I stayed an intern all the way through this past January or this past December. Switched over to full time in January actually. So the cool thing about their internship program is that we have high school interns going all the way through your 3rd year of your PhD. So you can stay an intern all the way through that, and it's actually a really cool program.
Wow.
So yeah,
Okay.
and after I think a year of service, you're eligible for them to pay for your school as well. So
Oh, that's great.
it's a really good program. Like
That's great.
I'm really impressed by it.
Was that the company that you were actually targeting to work for when you got out, or
Yeah.
from university, or that was your first choice, or was there somebody that you were actually looking at?
So they were my first choice because I was going to do automotive because, like I said, I like cars. But I had a close family friend of mine who was in the industry that was, gave me advice and was like, hey, it's very volatile and very up and down. So he's like, you probably should go focus on something else. So then I was like, okay, I'll do aerospace. And so I basically was targeting, all of the normal aerospace companies, Northrop, Lockheed, all of those ones that you would normally see. But for some reason, it was just like Boeing kept coming back, and that was like my favorite. No particular reason at that point. It was just that was the one I wanted to be at. And so to get that was a huge surprise, but it was really great to get that.
Awesome. You mentioned NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers, and
Yes.
in the episodes I've talked about SHIP, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. We're essentially brothers, same organization type of setting, where one deals more with Latinos, Hispanics, and NSBE deals more with the African American individuals. But they both are organizations that welcome students from any background or heritage, nationality, but they do have their setting and focus based on predominantly NSBE for Black engineers and SHIP for Hispanic Latino engineers. Now, I want to focus on Sheila. Am I saying that right? Seisha, I'm sorry. Yeah. Seisha. I want to focus on her because she mentioned internships, and she mentioned that she obtained an internship. In a previous episode, I spoke to an individual about internships, and you both seem to have gotten internships, but a lot of students do not know what an internship is. Now, what is an internship?
So an internship is basically an opportunity or a job before you actually turn into a full-time engineer. And so a lot of internships will give you projects to work on that will give you experience in the engineering field or in any field of that matter. And usually internships are for people who are still attending school. And so sometimes they're in the summer, sometimes they're throughout the year. For me, I've actually been interning with my company, Fresenius Medical Care, since last fall through this summer. And so I was interning part-time during the semesters. And then I've been mainly close to full-time. With COVID, I haven't been going in as much, but it's a really good opportunity to gain practical experience before you reach industry, and it allows you to understand what you like about a certain field that you're going into, and it just supplements education really well.
Supplements education really well. That's a key statement right there. Supplements education really well, because when corporations are actually looking to hire somebody, if you have that internship experience, that is actually practical work on the field experience. It's not just theoretical, where a lot of the classroom work that you do at a four-year university when you get your degree is theoretical, and you do have some labs. But if you are a candidate that never did an internship versus a candidate that maybe your GPA is not as good, but you did a couple internships, you would be more appealing to that corporation to bring you in, because they know you know how to work at the industry level at that point. We mentioned NSBE. Were each of you part of NSBE during college?
Yes. So both of us were actually NSBE presidents at one point
Okay.
of our collegiate chapter. So
Okay.
I think, Sasha, you had what, 4 different positions? Something
Yeah,
like that?
so whenever I got to college, one of my mentors before I started college, she actually was graduated chemical engineering and was working at IBM and now Microsoft in sales. And she told me, she said, "Hey, Sasha, whatever you do, get involved in NSBE." And I went to the first NSBE meeting my freshman year, and I was like, I'm not coming back to this meeting because it was me and one other freshman
Oh, wow.
and only the board members. And so I felt like maybe NSBE isn't the same as my mentor experience. But then I gave NSBE another chance, and I went to national convention my freshman spring semester.
So I'm going to stop you right there. Let's not go
Yeah.
into the national convention just yet. So you got into NSBE because a mentor or somebody you knew mentioned going to NSBE.
Mhm.
That's great. Now, your first meeting with NSBE was not the greatest. It was not necessarily something that you would highlight in your life with NSBE. Okay, we understand that. What about you, Brent? How did you find out about NSBE? You're a college athlete. You're playing
Mhm.
football. You're trying to focus on your academics. How did you discover and find time to be part of NSBE?
So 2 things. So I actually ended up, so initially I went to Southern Nazarene University, and that's where I was playing football at for 2 years. And then a year and a half, and then I transferred to UCO.
Okay.
So when I first got to UCO, I wasn't an athlete anymore, so I had more time than usual.
Okay.
But UCO's chapter actually had just been deactivated because all the board members graduated.
Mm.
So I wasn't aware of NSBE till 2016, 2017. So I was like my junior year. And I actually found it on Google
Oh, wow.
again.
Okay.
Found
Okay.
it on Google and was like, oh, what is this? And looked into it. I was like, oh, this is really cool. Why does my school not have this?
Mhm.
And so I ended up going to the national convention that year, which actually
This
happened
is
to be the
this
same
is
thing.
before you had a chapter
Yes.
at your university. So you
Yeah.
decided to go to the national convention without being a
Yes.
chapter at your university.
Yes. I had no idea what I
Oh,
was doing.
wow. Okay. Okay.
I just was like, I feel like I need to go to this conference. It seems cool. So I just
Okay.
went. And then that's actually when I got my internship at
Okay.
Boeing.
So let's
And
let's
yeah,
focus on you going into that convention
yeah,
because you neither of you actually knew what the feeling of a convention was. You
hmm
had no idea what it was. You're thinking, oh, it's a couple college students
hmm
getting together talking about
yep,
kumbaya, how to be happy together, how to
right.
succeed, etc., right? So I'm gonna ask Seisha,
Mhm.
what was your experience when you set foot into that convention center room where it's full on with the tables and companies and all the students are looking like you but dressed to impress in a professional setting? What was that feeling like?
Yeah, so for me, it was surreal. I had never seen anything like it in my whole life. I never saw that many Black people in one setting, because usually, I mean, I've probably seen hundreds, but there were thousands of people there.
Mhm.
And I was amazed because all of them were trying to achieve the same thing. We were all on the same mindset. Whenever I walked down the hallways, everyone was like saying motivational things and positive like affirmations to me. And I didn't even know the people. And I saw ages from kindergartners all the way to elderly people just everywhere, and it was so inspiring. It made me want to do better in school. It made me want to stay on the path to become an engineer. It was just one of the greatest times in my college career, I think. Yeah,
It was
one of the greatest.
empowering to you. It was
Yeah.
really empowering. That's amazing. Thank you. Yes. What about you, Brent?
Yeah.
This is your first time you go in, and I want to tell the audience, when you go
Mhm.
into this type of convention, Brent and Seisha were probably thinking it's just a couple college students going in and getting together. But
Mhm.
a
Right.
couple college students, I'm talking at the national level. You
Mhm.
have people from the West Coast,
Yep.
the Midwest, and
Mhm.
you have people from the East Coast. And
Mhm.
all colleges go together into one location in the nation, be it Oklahoma, be it California, be it
Mhm.
Nevada, be it wherever it was where you guys went. So you are walking in, you probably
Mhm.
have your suit and tie, you showered and you did whatever you needed to do. You know, what was that feeling when you open the doors and you walk in and bam, you see a whole bunch of corporations essentially
Yeah.
catering towards you as a young black
Mhm.
engineer, and
Mhm.
you see not hundreds but thousands of young black people that are
Yep.
there ready to succeed. What was that
Right.
feeling like?
I mean, it was actually a very emotional experience for me because like the school I was attending, while it is another public institution, it's not as large as like the OUs or OSUs, like the school that Stacia was at. So there wasn't really a lot of diversity at my school, so I was pretty much by myself, so to speak, in my classes. So going to see that was just like I tell people it's life changing and people think I'm crazy, but it really did something for me from just like I mean, it raised my expectations on, what's the standard. It motivated me to, try harder in school and, when stuff gets hard, just know that, there's all these other people that are doing the same thing, working towards the same goal. People that have already done it, there's people that haven't done it yet. It's just, seeing all of that and then the companies that are there because they know and have the expectation that they're going to get good talent from Nesby and places like Shep as well. That just that meant a lot to me just to be a part of it. Even if I ended up not even getting an internship there, just that experience, just seeing that did a lot for me just as a young engineer or aspiring engineer to keep going.
So I'm going to ask a question for both of you to answer. Um, so you didn't know about Nesby,
Mhm.
and now that you know and you've gotten so much out of it, how would you recommend or make aware of other students first to join Nesby? And then not only that, but once you're a graduating professional working on the field, how would you encourage those individuals that benefited from Nesby to come back and continue giving back to the institution organization that
Mhm.
supported them so strongly and created that strong foundation to make them successful to where they were able to obtain a job?
Right. You want to go first?
You can.
Okay, I'll go first. So for me, for K through 12 students, for me, just enlightening them about the family atmosphere that comes along with it, the support system. You have upperclassmen that are helping mentor and tutor these underclassmen. Obviously there's going to be job opportunities through these conferences and even just at your individual schools that you will get help with your resume and how to talk to recruiters, interviews, just from a professional standpoint, a social standpoint, and just sometimes it's not even school related. It's just getting you introduced to college, like that transition we talked about. Just being involved with Nesby and Shep and places like that. I've seen it where they've just helped them find the buildings for their classes and stuff like that. There's a lot of small things that make a big difference. And then for me, when you graduate and become a professional, I've always been taught to give back to people, just through my family. And so for me, I feel like I've gotten a ton just out of being in this organization. Be it I haven't even been in there that long. It's been a couple of years now, but just for me, all the stuff I've given out, I need to give back in. So I mean, currently I'm actually on the Oklahoma City professional chapters board as well. Just because I wanted to make it a point, like, you know, I'm going to give back to these students behind me and clear a path that someone cleared for me, kind of thing. So that's kind of been my whole mentality.
Understood.
Yeah, and so for me, it's a very similar thing. For K through 12, I would tell them it's worth it. It's worth your time. You're going to get a lot out of it, and it'll just grow you as an individual. You'll grow in the aspects of academics, you'll grow professionally, and you'll be able to understand the importance of making the world a better place and just giving back to the community. So it's really just all worth joining. Sometimes you might think, oh, it's gonna interfere with maybe this class that I have if it's for college students. And it's just, you're investing in yourself by being a part of something like NSBE that has such an enriching mission. And then for the professionals, I would say similar to Brent, it's important for us to give back, and it is also important for us to pour into the next generation of STEM leaders and just STEM professionals in general.
Great, great. Yes, and those are key points. Those are good points. Thank you both for sharing that with me and the audience. Now we fall into giving back, and this is where I think the STEMForce creation came about. Now, STEM obviously stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Force means family, opportunity, resilience, commitment, and excellence. Those are core values, and those are very tangible things that any student or individual can actually relate and comprehend at a very, very root level. Now, how did you guys decide to create STEMForce? And there's 4 of you that joined forces to create it. Now, I have 2 of you. One, Brent, the president, and Seisha, the vice president, right? Now, how did that come about? Who started the conversation? From what I understand, you 2 are not from the same college, so
No.
how did you guys get started?
So how we actually all got connected was actually going back to what we just talked about. It was actually through NSBE. So we're actually all were involved in NSBE, and that's how I actually met Seisha and then actually Jacoby, who's also on the board. So it was just one of those things where I know there's always opportunities to give financially and, you know, make a scholarship for students and things like that. But for me, it was just knowing how the educational system is, especially in Oklahoma. I mean, both of us are products of not having that exposure to STEM, but just having that one person that's like, hey, you know, you can do this, and that being enough for us to pursue it. And so I technically started the conversation, but what we found out was that, you know, Seisha was actually wanting to do something similar, and as well as the 2 other people on the board, we actually all were thinking the same thing and had never spoke about it prior to that. So with me just bringing it to their attention, they're like, oh yeah, I wanted to do the same thing. And so it just kind of, you know, it worked out perfectly for us. But yeah, our main thing was just to bridge that gap, because like you were saying, you know, depending where your background is and where you come from, you know, a lot of times determines if you go into some of these fields and some of these degrees. And so that's kind of our main thing, is to provide that access.
Now, did this conversation actually start at one of those professional NSBE meetings, or how did that go? And when did you start to actually go from conversation to executing and being boots on the ground, essentially?
So so we actually started talking about it last summer, but it wasn't in a NSBE meeting or anything like that. I actually just through NSBE built, you know, relationships with all the 3 of them. And so just me being me, just kind of started reaching out to them like, hey, this is something I'm thinking about doing. Like, you know, what do you think of it? And, you know, they kind of lit up and had the same kind of passion I had about it. I was like, oh, we might have something here kind of thing. And so we kind of started, you know, planning what this looks like, you know, come up with a name that would stand out and that means something. And so that's why, you know, we came up with STEMForce, and the acronym for force specifically is because we wanted to be a community and we wanted to create opportunities and to just, you know, show some of these kids that you can pursue STEM, you know, you are smart enough, you know, all of those things that they might not have ever heard from a teacher or from, you know, a parent. So that's kind of, yeah, that's kind of how that started.
When you actually, you know, everything sounds great and everything goes well, and you are in essentially this cocoon when you're talking about it, when you actually go out and venture into actually doing it, I'm assuming there
Mhm.
was obstacles and there was a little bit
Yes.
of hard work to actually break through anything. What were those
Hmm.
obstacles that you first encountered or have encountered so far?
Oh man. I,
Um,
okay, I guess I'll touch
you
on it.
want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. I'll
Okay.
start it. So the first thing was, you know, I knew obviously this is going to be a nonprofit, and it's supposed to be this thing called 501c3. Didn't know what that was or what it meant. Just knew that was what a nonprofit was. And so we started from, I would say ground zero, but I'd probably say underground zero because we really didn't even know, you know, what forms we need to fill out or, you know, how much it's going to cost. We didn't know any of that. So definitely Googled a lot and asked around and all of that kind of stuff. I don't know.
So creating the 501c3 nonprofit organization, setting it up officially was
Hmm.
the first obstacle.
Yes,
All right,
for
now
sure.
Seisha, you probably have some other stories that you want to share with us. What are those?
So it's been a great learning curve for all of us, from the forms that we had to fill out in the beginning to just executing this summer, like with the
Hmm.
STEM project that we just finished up, which was really
Yes,
great, but it
right.
was virtual because of COVID.
Hmm.
And we weren't sure that we were going to be able to do it because of COVID, but just with all of the planning and all of the
Yeah.
executing, I really started to learn more about myself and about the other team members on the board. There were just a lot of small conflicts that had to be resolved by just like communication problems. So I learned how to better communicate, and also learned how we all could work efficiently together as a team. And so just figuring out those teamwork skills and just figuring out all the forms and figuring out how to best execute, it was a huge learning curve, but I'm really grateful for the opportunity because it just really grew us, and we're
Yeah.
able to live out our lives' mission and purpose to help give back to the younger generation.
Now, as a 501c3, have you guys obtained a grant from some organization to allow you to do this venture, or are you still working on that?
So we're still working on that.
Okay.
We actually are filling out grants, you know, as we speak.
So you're also doing grant writing and
Yep.
trying to figure out how to send it and trying to figure out how to format that whole structure of
Right.
grant writing so
Right.
that it becomes successful. So at this point, where does the funding to create any of the programs that you have? You have a website and you probably have some material that you have to use. Does that
Hmm.
come from your personal pocket, or is that from NSBE or local organizations that believe in you? How is that
Hmm.
happening?
So predominantly it's coming actually out of our pockets. But with the project, we just partnered actually with the Urban League in Greater Oklahoma City. They actually paid for the materials, and we provided more of the programming and planning aspect of it. And so that was actually a way for us to be able to do that without having the established funds that we're working on, you know,
Okay.
trying to build up. So
Okay. Up to this point, and I'm assuming it's been about a year since the conception to the inception of STEMForce, what has been the most memorable moment from your experience by doing this venture?
I'll let you go first.
Yeah. So I think that the most memorable, I'm thinking there's so many memorable portions of just creating the nonprofit and then going through it. So the most memorable I would have to say was this summer whenever we actually got to have our partnership with the Urban League. And so we had them build a renewable city, and we had majority elementary schoolers. There were a few middle schoolers, but they were making houses with solar panels. They were making wind turbines and even water systems. And the most memorable part of it was when we actually went to put the finishing touches on their cities. And it was just so inspiring because they were so excited. And these were students who had never heard of engineering before, students who had never seen a Black engineer, students had never seen a woman engineer. And so they really were thrilled to see that I was an engineer, and they wanted to be engineers afterwards. And actually didn't just say, oh, I want to be an engineer because you're an engineer, but they had real reasons to become engineers. Some of them wanted to work on cars, some of them wanted to work on airplanes, others wanted to work actually on ice cream. And so I thought it was really neat and fun just being able to talk to them and really see the impact that we were able to have on them. And it warmed my heart. It really did.
So I'm assuming, and from what you're saying, you have become mentors yourselves. You are giving back to those children in elementary school, but not only them, to the community itself. You're showing them that, Black engineers are real and they are here. I am proud to say that I'm one of them from your standpoint of view. And not only saying, I have a job, I made it, I'm good, but you're saying, I'm doing well and I want you to do well. SHIP has a saying that says, lift others as you rise. And you guys are a living example of exactly that. You're lifting others as you're rising yourselves. And this is to NSBE and to an organization that you created, which is the STEMForce. That is incredible. Now that you are mentors, you know that, but I want to acknowledge you for that. How does that make you feel, knowing that people actually look up to you? What is that feeling like now, and that responsibility that has been handed to you?
I guess I'll go first. For me, I actually had, on top of, for example, the students at the Urban League, I've actually had even some of my younger cousins that have came to me and actually want to pursue STEM now just from seeing me do it. And so for me, that was part of my initial goal in doing the stuff that I was doing. Like, I wanted to do STEM for myself, but I also wanted to reach back to, my own family that was in similar circumstances and show them, like, you can do this. And so for me, I take that responsibility on as, I need to be, doing stuff the right way and back as much as I can and showing them the way. Even though I didn't have that, I want to provide that for them, kind of thing. And so that's kind of how I look at it, is, I need to provide a path for all of these kids and students that are in these communities.
Awesome. Brent, what about you, Seisha?
So just being able to have the opportunity to serve as a mentor to me is such a great opportunity, and I'm grateful for it every day. And it inspires me to try my best, even on the days when I feel like I'm not good enough, or days that I might be hard on myself. I just fix my mindset and realize that what I'm doing is much greater than myself, and it's my responsibility to help those around me and help those that are looking up to me. I have 2 younger siblings. I'm the oldest. And so I've always been paving the way for them. And so my mentoring started with them. And it started with my mom giving me the opportunity, or the responsibility, I should say, the responsibility to take care of them sometimes, and babysit. And so for me, I look at the students or the friends that I'm mentoring as just extensions of my family, just other brothers and sisters that I have that need help. And so I try to help them in every way that I can. And it's just a great opportunity, and I take the responsibility seriously, because me mentoring someone could be the difference between them finding their purpose or not finding it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That makes a lot of sense. What is, you have a shirt and it says World Invasion. What is that?
Yeah, so World Envision is actually a t-shirt and athletic wear company that's based in New Orleans, and it was started some years back. And basically, it's 2 guys that started it while they were in college, and they wanted to have everyone pursue their purpose. And so their mission is just for everyone to keep basically not get tunnel vision in what they're doing, but keep the world in vision whenever they're pursuing things. And so I got these t-shirts, and whenever I bought them, they had me type in my purpose and my vision for the future. And so whenever I got the t-shirts, I was like, wow, this is really cool, because it came with a typed letter that had my vision and purpose on there. And so I taped it on my wall. But they're sort of like us, trying to allow, people to know what their purpose and passion is, and just get them to pursue it.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Yeah, I've been meaning to ask you about that, but it's like I wanted to have the interview go first and then bring that
Right.
up. I see you have a background with STEMForce. For those that are watching and want to know more information about STEMForce, you can Google or go straight into STEMForceinc.com. STEMForceinc.com. So, and you, or Google it, and then you'll definitely find information about that. Now, you have, both of you, Seisha and Brent, you are very successful. You, from my point of view, I want to acknowledge you as successful individuals. You, Seisha, have an internship at this moment. You're about to graduate. You're on your last year. Brent, you have an electrical and a mechanical engineering major. You are working in Boeing, and you're pursuing your master's. What is, you have founded or created STEMForce, and what is the next step for each of you? Are you going to pursue the industry and be employees of a corporation, or are you going to devote yourselves a lot more to following through with STEMForce and full on going into a full-time role if STEMForce actually picks up and focusing on giving back to the community? What are the next steps for each one of you?
You want me to go first? Okay, I'll go first. For me, I do plan on continuing to work at Boeing and do STEMForce. And so we've actually, and that's kind of what Seisha was alluding to, we've kind of figured out the kinks of, figuring out everyone's schedules and all of that stuff to be able to orient everything to where we can at the same time. And so we don't really want to be like half and half. We want to be, 100% on both and just do everything efficiently so we're able to do that. And so that's kind of, where we see ourselves going, or me personally.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a similar story for me. I'm going to graduate, and once I graduate, I'm going to go into a full-time position at a company, but I will still give all of my time that I'm not at work to STEMForce. and just make sure that I'm putting in enough effort so that it can continue to grow.
Okay, great, great. Right now, it works well because we're in a virtual environment per se, but have you guys thought about, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to, but have you guys thought about it when we go back to
Mhm.
being at a physical location? Let's say, Seisha, when you graduate, you don't get a job in Oklahoma, you go to Washington State, or you go to California, or you go to New York because that's where the job is and you have to physically be there. Or Brent, let's say you go to the headquarters over in Washington for Boeing. How will you guys deal with that at that point?
So actually, with the pandemic going on, actually has prepared us more for that scenario more than probably what we would have at this point. Just because a lot of our stuff we've actually added the flexibility to where we could do stuff virtually. And so if we do have, let's say a board member or two that are out of state, we actually feasibly could still do the same kind of programming we're wanting to do at the same level. So definitely the pandemic's actually helped us from that standpoint.
Awesome, awesome. You got anything to add there, Seisha?
Yeah, so originally we never foresaw a pandemic. And so we had everything ready to go as if we were going to be doing this in person. We had STEM days that we were going to have at local community centers, and we're going to go into the schools and the after school programs. And like Brent said, being virtual is just expanded our horizons and just allowed us to be able to build up a sustainable infrastructure, because being virtual required us to have more flexibility and think outside of the box that being in person wouldn't ever have given us that opportunity.
Okay.
Wouldn't have been a priority for sure.
Awesome,
Right.
awesome, great. And want to ask you one question about college. There's been a lot of influencers or a lot of people with a lot of clout in the social medias that have been saying college or a college degree is not really necessary to be successful in life. In my point of view, from my perspective, I think that for colored Latinos and Blacks, it is really essential to have an education because it opens so many doors for us to allow us to be successful. I want to get an insight from you coming from families that pushed you to pursue education. How would you say or tell individuals that are probably watching whether college is beneficial or not beneficial? What are your thoughts on that?
I'll go first. So I think college and just education in general is beneficial. So, I also think trade schools are something that kind of get neglected, but if that's what you want to do, you can make a lot of money actually doing some of those skills as well. But kind of what you said, a lot of minorities, if you don't have the education, then, it's pretty tough sledding to be able to make a living. And so that's kind of a door of access for a lot of minorities to, outside of like things like athletics and entertainment, to actually be able to provide for their families and to, make a living. And so I do think it's important from that aspect. And then also, even being an entrepreneur, that's, you can do that as well, but that's not for everybody as well. So, it just kind of depends on what you're wanting to do and that kind of thing.
Right. What about you, Seisha? Any comments and opinions on that?
Yeah, so just like Brent said, college is super important. Having education is important. And for me, I think that beyond college, college is a foundation for you to be able to get the career that you want, to be able to have a seat at the table sometimes. And so it's really, really important. But beyond just the classroom of college and learning just in general is very important. So knowing how to learn and always being a life learner, I feel like it's just something that everyone should aspire to do in life, because it'll allow you to be able to keep growing as an individual and as a person. And so I think that it's important.
That's great. Knowing how to learn. That's a key point. That's a key point.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good leaders always create good leaders. Do you guys have any individuals you actually look up to? Who are your mentors?
Who are our mentors?
Yes, that you
Oh,
look
yes.
up to.
Yeah, so I have a couple. Obviously, mom and dad are obviously mentors for me, but I actually have one that actually helped me along my journey of kind of discovering I want to do engineering, and I kind of alluded to him earlier. So we actually have a family friend that he actually at the time he was a plant manager for Chrysler. And so he was actually running one of the plants out in Sterling Heights, and he actually, my senior year, let me actually come up there and shadow him for a week and just see, what the manufacturing environments look like and what engineers do and all of that kind of stuff. And so him, and then there's some other people, but he's probably the one that sticks out to me right now
He's the
outside of
main
like
one.
family
Okay.
that really kind of made a difference in this area.
Okay, awesome. Shout out to your mentor there, Brent.
For sure.
What about you, Seisha?
So it's similar to Brent. My parents have always just instilled in me working hard, and that hard work does pay off. And so I've seen it day in and day out in their lives. And then besides them being a mentor, I actually alluded to her before. One mentor that I have is chemical engineering background, and she now works for Microsoft. And so she's been a great mentor for me. We actually traveled abroad together, and she just opened my mind and my eyes to all of the possibilities. She really gave me that essential exposure.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. Do you guys have any particular book, movie, or podcast that you believe have made an impact in your life that you wish more people take advantage of?
You want to go first on that?
I'm not a big media person, so I'm gonna say 2 books. So the first thing is What I Know for Sure by Oprah Winfrey. I've read that book a few times, and it just talks about the things that she knows for sure in life, and she talks about joy and resilience. And then one that I'm currently reading right now is Limitless by Jim Quick, and it's a really fascinating book, and it talks about how to learn. And so it's really good. It talks about your brain and how to learn faster and how to retain things. And so I'm enjoying every minute of it.
Awesome. Limitless. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
What about you, Brent?
Yeah, so there's 2 books that come to mind. One is Greatness is Upon You by Dr. Eric Thomas. And I actually watch his podcasts and videos as well. But that book made a big impact on me just from a mentality standpoint. And then also the other one is Leadership and Self-Deception. So that actually was recommended by my manager at Boeing. And that one really helped me when it comes to just navigating the corporate environment and just that kind of
That's
area.
good to know. That's good to know. That's
That
good
one
to
helped
know.
me out a
Awesome.
lot.
Thank you so much. Right. You both are very successful, and everybody has a definition of success. I want to know what your definition of success at this point in your life is, and we're going to start with Seisha.
Okay, so I'm thinking about it a little bit. I think in the simplest form, my definition of success is the ability to keep growing.
Ability to keep growing. That's simple and that's
Good.
straightforward. The ability to keep growing, yes, because if we stop it, then we stop being successful. That's amazing. Thank you. What about you, Brent?
Man, that's a tough one to follow. It was so like straight to the point. Success for me, it varies person to person, but I think it's more about what goals you set for yourself. So it's about setting milestones for yourself. So I feel like you know, when you map out your life and what you're trying to do, when you do hit those goals, I consider that success because you're hitting where you're trying to get to, kind of thing.
Right.
So
So
you're following your path.
even if it's a small goal, you should
Yeah.
celebrate it because that's a step forward to your bigger goals and your
Yeah.
success. And that, every day, and I tell students every day, if you make your bed in the morning, you already won a little
Yeah.
bit.
Right.
If
Yeah.
if you achieve to dress correctly, you've added on to it.
Yeah.
If you go to class and you get there on time, you added on to
Mhm.
that. So it's a compounding interest, compounding
Yep.
effect. And overall, if you win the day, you win the week. If you win the week, you win the
Right.
month. If you win the month, you essentially win the year. If you win year after year, you are continuing to succeed. And
Right.
that's incredible. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that, Brent.
And I think it needs to get like, I think people need to celebrate the small victories more anyway, you
Right.
know,
Yeah, right.
because it is overlooked a lot. So
Right, exactly. Everybody's thinking, oh, I got to win big in order to be successful. That's not necessarily true.
right.
If you can still, be able to get to work on time, that's a win.
Mhm.
That's a success. Celebrate
Right.
that. Make sure that you're still uh,
Mhm.
successful in that form. This
Right.
last question, I want to ask from each of you to close your eyes and to travel back in time. On
Okay.
this one, I want you to travel back in time for Seisha. I want you to go back into that freshman year when you're walking with your backpack into that university and you're coming out of that first midterm and you're a little bit sad and you're even shooken and you want to possibly change your major. I want you to go back and tell that young lady three pieces of advice if you had about 2 to 3 minutes that you could share with her. And for Brent, I want you to go back to that young individual, to that 9-year old boy, when you're sitting with your mom and she tells you, shoot higher. And I want you to open the door and walk into that room to that young Brent. What
Mhm.
three pieces of advice would you share with him at that moment?
Mm. Oh,
Let's go with Seisha first.
Yeah. So I would see a younger version of myself looking like I was about to cry on my way to get some chocolate pancakes. Um, and I would tell her that it gets better and that it will be worth it to keep working hard every day and remember that you're fulfilling your purpose, what you've been called to do, and that every step might not be easy, but not to lose hope, not to give up because it'll be worth it once you get to where you're going.
Awesome. Awesome.
yeah.
What about you, Brent?
Yeah. For me, the first thing that comes to mind is just, you know, your identity isn't just an athlete. Because at that time I was looking at being a football player. Um, and next is, you know, you'll do more for people with your head than you will with your athletic ability, and make a greater impact. And then the third one is, um, just that when you're in your purpose, everything falls into line.
That's
Because at the time I was very unsure, about where I was going. I just knew at that time I wanted to be a professional football player, but you know, didn't know anything else about where I was trying to go. So just, you know, following your purpose, and you know, everything will take care of itself.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And that also has a lot of impact what you are doing, both of you with STEMForce and
Mhm.
being out in the field in the community, being mentors to those young individuals. You're showing them that there's a different path that they can
Mhm.
take because football
Right.
players are awesome, basketball players are awesome, but for colored individuals, I think that is what society wants us to think that is the path, which is not necessarily completely the whole
Right.
truth. we can do a lot more things and be more impactful in other ways. So you guys are doing a great job. I want to thank you and acknowledge you for what you are doing and for allowing me the pleasure of interviewing you, learning about STEMForce, and showcasing what you guys are doing. For those in the audience, I want to thank you for listening and for being part of Success Innovation. And I want you to connect with Brent and Seisha in their social media, be it LinkedIn or Instagram. You can connect with them and support them financially through STEMForce if you are able to, but also with your words of kindness and support that also make a difference. Thank you so much. This is Lázaro Herrera for watching Success Innovation. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for finishing another wonderful episode with Success Innovation. Today we learned so much more about Brent Gaddis II and Sasha Sells. We get to know them at a personal and professional level. I personally was mesmerized with their stories about what it took for them to enter college and how they have been tenacious in developing STEMForce. The success and empowerment of underrepresented minorities is high on their list. It is incredible to hear how NSBE was the catalyst for them to catapult and continue on their path. Thank you, Brent Gaddis II and Sasha Sells, for all that you do. This has been Lázaro Herrera for Success Innovation. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.